Hi, this is September Dorman with the Business Accelerator Podcast. I just had the pleasure of speaking with Alec Stern. Now, if you don't know Alec Stern, I highly recommend that you get to check him out. Go onto LinkedIn, check out who he is and what he's done. On this podcast, we're talking about pillars for achieving small business success, the early days lessons learned. Alec is an entrepreneur, a speaker, mentor, and investor, and he's become known as the America's startup success expert for performing hundreds of keynote speeches all over the world. He's also been co-founder or a founding team member of 8 startups with 5 exits, 2 IPOs, and 3 acquisitions. Alec knows a thing or two about business. He provides valuable insight and sage wisdom in this podcast. Alec, so what is your background? What makes you an authority in this space? I understand that you are kind of a breakthrough expert. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, September. Look forward to talking to the group. So I mean, I think anyone that's considered an authority, I've been sort of titled the America's Startup Success Expert. I've founded 8 companies. I've had 5 exits, 2 IPOs, and 3 acquisitions. The one most people know is Constant Contact, that I was one of the original 3 in an attic. So from being, I guess, a serial entrepreneur, I like to say a serial entrepreneur who likes cereal. This week it's Honey Nut Cheerios, if you want to know. But my experience of doing something and repeating it and having success repeatedly, I guess would consider one way of deeming an authority on it. But I also go around the world speaking to hundreds of thousands and work with many for other startups, where I'll just take some of the things that I've learned, early days lessons learned, and empower them with those and see them have success as well. So I guess it's proven authority through proven experience.
What do you think is the biggest contributor to your startup success? And let me kind of set the stage for the question here, is that when we're looking at business owners in that startup phase, and even people that are seasoned, but their business is still in that startup phase because they haven't evolved out of that, what would you say has allowed you to understand the startup phase, build what you need to build inside that startup phase, and get out of the startup phase and start moving into growing and scaling the business? What has allowed you to do that so many times very successfully?
Yeah. So I guess we back up just for a second around, I'll talk to a large group and I'll show of hands how many of you think you're an innovator, and like 10% of the room raises their hand. And I'm like, how many of you have ideas around a product or service you've experienced in the last month that could have been done better? And every hand goes up. And so the only difference between someone with an idea and an innovator is if you take the idea and you noodle on it and you share it with others and you start to work on it, and some folks like, oh my God, I love that too, I want to help. Now you've moved from someone with an idea to an innovator. And so if 85% of the businesses today are already existing products and services that someone just can come in and execute better, and 15% are ones that are brand new, like we did with Constant Contact and Uber, Airbnb, and so on. That one has some additional sort of challenges of when you're starting out, because you might be creating a new category that you have to promote and educate on, a category and then a brand. But if it's something that's already in existence and people have spent money to experience a product or service, and now you're coming out with a better version of it, you know that you have a chance of success there, because there's a propensity to want that product or service. Now it's just the first thing you have to do is go out and test this as early as possible and get feedback. And so we oftentimes will stay kind of close to the vest, don't want to share our idea, someone may steal it. The idea is already out there, and you're going to be doing stuff different and better. You don't have to give them the secret sauce for how. But the bottom line is, if you don't get out as early as possible and get out of stealth mode, I put in quotes, then you'll never sort of see your way in that startup phase to some success, because you aren't going out and getting that feedback.
Well, let's look at it from an operational standpoint. In startup companies, you're doing everything. You're wearing all of the hats, everything. And so this idea of how do I get it out there to even test it, and where do I go, and where do I find the people, and how do I keep the accounting going, and how do I handle the customer service, and well, what about the email marketing, and how about my email management myself? I mean, the business owner, especially in startups, they're so overwhelmed with all that needs to be done in the day-to-day operations. How do you step out of that? How have you stepped out of that role? Did you ever play that role? Did you ever play the day-to-day operations and then eventually move out of it? What'd that look like for you?
Yeah, so yes, but I would say the success moral to that story is stay in your lane. So my lane is go to market, branding, out in front of the customer, figuring out kind of the messaging and how to take it to market. And so what are you going to do in the early days to get going, and what are you going to do to scale? And so while, yes, I had to wear a lot of hats, but staying in the lane, I mean, I would bring in, in the earlier days, bringing in other resources to help, contract people or fractional CFO or fractional, potentially a CMO, depending on the needs. And then, and as early as possible, divide and conquer. When you're starting a business and you're the general store manager and you have to stock the shelves and run the register and pay the bills and do, you're doing it all. You're emptying the trash can at night, like whatever, you're doing it all. And so the bottom line is you're spending so many cycles and time on things that probably are not in your lane. And do you want to learn, QuickBooks to be able to balance the financials? No, I don't. I've never used QuickBooks. I never want to learn it. I know that I can bring in others who know it and can actually wear those hats. And so as early as possible, we were scrappy. We were taking in interns, in the heyday, I have 20 interns, doing all kinds of different things. I've got several businesses I'm starting now, and I've hired my second intern for one of the projects today. And I have a third one that I'm about to hire because I'm staying in my lane. Like, could I go and learn the tools to the tools to change the website, to do the graphics, to video editing, to all those things? Sure, I could go figure it out. I don't want to, and I shouldn't, because I'm more valuable doing what I'm good at, staying in my lane.
What about when business owners run into finance problems where they're saying, I hear what you're saying, Alec, and I definitely want to have a team. I want some interns and some VAs and a personal assistant, and I really want some help, but I don't have the budget for it.
Yeah, so
chicken or the egg.
Yeah, it is a chicken and the egg, or the egg, and depending on kind of the situation. And so, so I'm going to go back to time value of money. Right. So could you pay $15 or $20 for an intern just resources to help you? On the lower end, there are a ton of resources that can get you by and give you some help. Virtual assistants and others aren't really that expensive. Time value of money. What is your time worth per hour if you were to have to do those things? So I hear that all the time, and I used to say that all the time. And I had someone in my life that was that bug in my ear to always say, why should we spend money on that? We could just do it. But when you think about your time value of money, if I'm worth $200 an hour, whatever you think you're worth, and it's going to cost you 15, 20, or 30 an hour for someone to take some of those tasks, you're going to get more done and be more productive of advancing your idea and your business simply by spending a little. And so when we didn't have it, we found a way to cover it because that was the only way we were gonna succeed. And when you have to do it all and you try to do it all, you're going to get mired in all the details. And guess what? The obstacles will be bigger and grander when you're out of your lane. There's enough issues and things you've got to deal with in the business in its own right and for what you're good at. But all those other things are just going to be a pile on. And I worry that when someone will say, I don't have the money for it, in the situation with COVID today and now co-founder of 5 companies, which is crazy. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. And so I've got to find ways to do things and I can't do them all. And so now that I have more time, I've jumped into all of those to do more and I just can't. So I've said, okay, well, I've got to find a way to invest in others so we can advance quickly and not have me be the blocker, trying to figure stuff out, fumbling around doing it, and then spending all of my time on it, like wasted cycles that I could be doing something else.
I was having a conversation with one of our members earlier this morning. I'm teaching a systems class. I love systems and I love to systematize anything I can get my hands on. I think it's part of my organizational nature. I love to organize. I've always been a natural organizer. And so to build systems is something that I love doing and I absolutely love to teach. So I was on a call with one of our members who's curious about the class, and he had said the most perfect thing. He goes, I'm in the way. I'm in the way and stopping the company from growing because I have my hands in too much stuff and I'm doing too much. I have a team, but I'm still doing too much. Nothing is systematized. It's all in my head. I don't have time to lay it off to somebody else or to put it on to delegate it to somebody else. And so it's stopping that mental cycle of I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, and figuring out a way to make it happen is what I'm hearing you say. And so when you're figuring out a way to make it happen, oh my gosh, you can hire a VA for $20 a week. Say you get a $5 an hour VA, and they only need to work 4 hours because they're efficient. You systematize their process. Now a task that would normally take you 4 hours, they can do it in 1 because it's all systematized and right there. In the lessons that you've learned in the past, and especially in your early days, were you ever faced with a situation where you knew you had to bring somebody in, but you didn't have an extra 10,000 sitting in the bank to say, oh, I'm comfortable to hire this person, but I've got enough income flowing in on a weekly basis that I've got, and I have extra $500 a week that I can do something with in my business. Were you ever faced with a situation like that?
Yeah, so I think that what we're talking about is the difference between expansion of your core team, and that could be in the earliest days of finding a co-founder or a couple of other folks. There needs to be more than one person having the responsibility of this business on their forehead. And if you're going to go out and get funding, the first thing they're going to want to see is more than initially they'll accept the fact that there's one founder, if you will. But they're going to want to see co-founders because they want to see someone staying in their lane and bringing in experts in these other lanes that can drive it forward. You cannot sit there. I'll give you the analogy of a regular small business. There is no way that the chef is going to have a skillet in one hand and a keyboard in the other. Like, let's be real here. So you go and you look at your business, like, what lane are you in? And so in my case, it's all on the go-to-market, the front end. Could I sit and, like my idea of coding is drawing out on a napkin, moving it into PowerPoint, and joke with the tech team, can you save this as HTML? So that's as far as I go. And so I can be creative and have the ideas and want to show the flows. And so how do we formalize that? But again, it's bringing in, the right people to help. So what you're talking about is like the expansion of a team. The difference between hiring someone to maybe be your CFO or your CTO or somebody, or the difference in early days to get sort of a bunch of more junior folks to just be able to help and guide in prototyping and being able to get you a finished example of your product to show others to get feedback. And so I think it's a timing thing. So in the earlier days, I would lead toward getting as much help as I could, including folks, I remember we had 3 in an attic when we started Constant Contact. The fourth person was a dear friend who was in banking marketing. And she's like, I'm dying over here. Everything I write goes over to legal and they rip it apart and say, I can't say anything. I can't be creative. And I said, well, I'm starting another tech company, one before Constant Contact. And I said, if you want to moonlight, I can't pay you. But if you want to moonlight and get a feel for tech and so on. So she jumped in and we sold that company in 9 months. And it was an acqui-hire to get the engineers and the product. And of course, I was out, she was out. I said, sorry, I've got to take a little bit of time and I'll come back to you when I have another idea. And then Constant Contact was next. And I said, do you want to come? And she was moonlighting, for free to just be a fly on the wall and help us. She was an amazing writer. And so she ended up being the fourth in the attic, and went from a free person who wanted to learn, kind of moving into another industry with her skill set of marketing and content writing and so on. And then she ended up staying with the company for 10 years. We branded and trademarked her title, Email Marketing Diva. And she wrote our newsletter and hints and tips. And she was the voice. She created the voice of the company, and she would deliver that voice for 10 years. And so a great example of, like, I couldn't afford to bring a lead in person in marketing, didn't have the budget, but found a way to get a senior person to come in and help. And so I think it's an evolution, and in time, sometimes you just start with some other folks, either, as we talked earlier, of interns and so on, or college. Today, there's so many college kids that are now working. They're home, they're hanging out, they're taking classes remote. And so I've now hired two college kids that are going to help me on projects, and I've got a third that I'm about to bring on next week. And so again, could I bring in a head of marketing for this particular thing? Yes, but it's too early and we don't have the budget. So I think, again, it'll be timing. And if we get this going enough and validate the idea, then I could go to that person when we're a little bit further along, who might say, you know what, I want to come in and I won't take a salary like the rest of you. I'll take some equity and ownership in the business. Sure, love that all day long. And you might be able to find ways to be creative to bring in the senior resources without necessarily having to pay them.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like that idea. And because I really need to find a sales manager for us. That's not my lane. I can do it. I don't like doing it. It's not my lane. I love that you're saying this. So this is good. Now, what if you don't have the immediate relationships around you? Where could a business owner find these type of relationships that would be open to being a partner, or what you're calling moonlighting? I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Where can you find them? Are they, are you asking around to the people that you know? Are you doing a campaign on LinkedIn, on Facebook or Twitter, or anything like that? How can you find some of these people that are open, especially now? My God, there's so many people that are out of work right now.
And
How can you leverage that?
Right, and so many will add value today. They may be furloughed, may or may not get their job back. They may be receiving some unemployment, but could they volunteer and give a hand and get and they're great at what they do, but are really want to keep honing their skills, and you'd be surprised how many would want to jump in and potentially help. And in fact, even for those that were furloughed for their company, could you possibly even just go be working for free for a little while being furloughed, and possibly get your unemployment and just coach or help a little bit, but without an anticipation of getting paid, to just stay in the game, stay fresh, and then potentially even get that job back. But there's so many that are available. And so I actually have not used any of the techniques you referenced, except for just the LinkedIn and others, to just see in my sphere of influence and the people that I know, like if there's somebody that I'm looking for, type of person or a specific person, who knows them? And it's usually within 2 degrees I could find somebody that knows that person or someone at that company where there's a warm intro in. And so I think today more than ever, we should be focusing on our sphere of influence. So I've sort of been coining in this phrase that it's not social distancing, it's not physical distancing, it's long distancing. Mm-hmm. And by long distancing, what I'm referring to is getting out and calling into your network and calling into the people that have been in your past. I've had amazing professors, amazing mentors, amazing people just in my life that I just don't, they're like the stars you see every night and you look up and you think of them, but you're not proactive in reaching out. And I've been reaching out to quite a few people, taking time to just literally do that and then reconnect, have a conversation, lead with value. So what are you working on? Is there anything I can help you with? Mm-hmm. And of course they come around and say, well, what are you doing? And I say, well, I'm working on this and I could use this. And through one of those connections, I got to all these college kids. A professor at the University of San Diego said, I've got a bunch of interns, that they're all looking for stuff. And I said, I need this, this, and this. And we've got 2 so far. And she found me the 3rd one yesterday. And so it was just through a reach out, check in, and all of a sudden now we're collaborating to fulfill that need. But you will find through your network and within 2 degrees of that network, usually what you're looking for. And so I haven't been sort of posting things out, formally, although it's a great suggestion to do so. I've just really, I've centered that around my network.
Yeah, you've got a great network, Alec, and that's something that we really stress at CEO Space. I mean, our community is so focused on relationship and law of reciprocity, just like you're saying. So how can I help you? And they always come around. How can I help you? Whether it's a referral or they can help you indirectly, and they can even scout for you. But what would you say are those key metrics that a business owner needs to pay attention to on a daily or regular basis to know what their business is doing and where it's going?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's one that's often sort of overlooked. It ties back to a couple of things. One, whatever you're doing, you might have your vision of 5 years or where we're going to be like, I want to sell this company, I want to go public, I want to buy another company, or I want to build a nice family-run business that'll provide for me and my family to have the things that we want in life. Whatever sort of that big vision and goal is, that's fine. But then you step back to what are you doing every single day? Today, like what are you doing today that's going to move you closer to sort of advancing sort of toward that? And I think, there's a lot of sort of ways to sort of answer, but I, for me, you have to know what the goal is you have a set a goal, What are your objectives to achieving that goal? You might be more into your mission and vision and so on. But at the end of the day, how are you measuring success? And when I ask companies that are starting something, they're all wide-eyed and excited about what they're doing. I'm like, how are you going to measure success? And they can hardly answer. And it's usually something around the 5-year, and it's not about today, this quarter, this year. And so you have to have a set of metrics that you're driving the business on, that you're going to be being able to measure yourself and your team on, are you actually heading in on a path to success or not? And so having these key performance indicators, KPIs, and the things you've got to, what's the result we're looking for, and how are we going to measure it with those KPIs? It's key. And so it will vary by business, but I would say you've got to come up with the 5 to 10 things you're going to measure, and be watching that to see if we're on this happy path towards success or not. And you need to see that today, because you don't want to wake up in a year, or 6 months or a year and be like, God, we're so off track. If you were sailing a boat and you had your lat long lines of where you're going, you could be on that exact lat line, but you could be with current and other things, be shifting over and completely miss your mark. But going down the road, and I've been, this is from a real life experience many times, but you could be sailing along thinking we're destined for our end goal of the next marker, and you miss it because you've just shifted over and you're not watching, you're not measuring and checking everything to make sure. So you're just cruising along all happy. So you might be having some success with, we got another customer, or we got this or got that. Great, those are some metrics. But what are the underlying things that you need to be measuring to make sure you're on that path? And so some of the initial ones are things like cost of acquisition. I'll ask so many businesses, what is the cost of acquisition? What does it take you to? What does it cost you to get your next customer? And they can't answer it. And that's not just online things that are easily measured. Like if you're doing pay-per-click and things that you're paying for, you can get metrics to say, okay, got it. What are the offline things you're doing to get that customer? So for example, if you were a gallery owner, and so I own the gallery, and you come into the gallery September and you look at some art, you spend an hour and then you leave. You come back another day, spend another hour, ask some questions, and then you leave. You call the gallery, ask a couple more questions for about a half hour, and then you come in that third time, so you've been for another hour, and then you buy a painting. So if the time value is worth $100 an hour, you came in 3 times and half hour on the phone, we've spent $350 worth of time and effort for your experience to come in, but you bought a $1,000 painting. And so we don't have to do the hard math here, but you've made $650. Right now you go home and you put that on the wall, and some friends come over and visit, and someone's like, I love that piece of art. Tell me about it. Where'd you get it? One of those goes and buys a $1,000 painting. Well, now you have $1,650 and you spend $350, because that second one, there's a little bit of investment for them coming in, but they're not going to spend 3.5 hours. A trusted source yourself telling them about it, said, I'll go to this gallery. Maybe they spend an hour. So you spend $450 and you made $1,650. Like, thinking about the time and effort. Why is that important? It's important because, if you're the solopreneur and you're spending all this time, you need to know what it takes for you to close that customer. And you can't get frustrated. I'm spending another hour with them. If you have a staff or a team that's working with you, and so you're coming in for the second time, they're probably at that point saying hi, and they're on their phone at the desk. They're not engaging. And maybe when they see the third time, or they take the phone call to answer some questions, they're like, oh, here's that tire kicker September again. And if you knew it took you 3.5 hours of time and effort, then you would be engaging with them more as time went on, because you're like, okay, we're getting close to the success point of 3.5 hours. And so it's just, you have to be in tune and understand that and measure that. So those are one of the first things, because you don't have a lot of time. Time is just so precious in the earlier days when you're starting something. So if you've taken time that you're wasting on all these things we said you don't need to, stay in your lane, right? Get rid of those, got a little more time. But now you've got to invest the time. If you're out selling, or you're working with someone to go sell, they can't get frustrated at hour 2 when it takes 3.5 hours. So you're going to work as cost of acquisition. So you're willing to spend $350 to gain that next new customer. And then when it comes to things you could pay for in marketing, you might say, look, I'll spend $200, or if someone refers someone, and I'll give them $250 because I normally spend $350. I'll give them something for that referral. If it's warm and if they buy and if they sign up for our service, I'm happy to pay some sort of a referral. So there are ways to measure that sort of cost of acquisition. And then you start to form some of the other important ones like lifetime value. What's that customer worth to you over time? Lifetime value. And then some of the other metrics that wrap around it. And so if you know those, the earlier you know those, the more targeted you can be in terms of how you're spending your time and money. Like you know, as you were saying earlier, someone might say, I can't afford that. I can't afford to spend, $200 for that program, but you're paying $350, with offline costs as well. Like you might change your thoughts around where you're investing or sort of having the feeling to test things. Like I'll test something for $200 because I know it normally costs $350. Guess what? If it turns into a customer, I've lowered my cost of acquisition, and now I got to maybe pour gas onto whatever I tested because it worked. And so just to give you a few metrics, like in Constant Contact, the average customer stayed 5 years, which is amazing. They told 2 other people. So our service was roughly $42 a month. So an average customer paid us about $1,600 as the life of a customer. They told 2 other people, so we made $4,800. And our average cost of acquisition was roughly $350. So we spent $500, $700 testing things because we knew if we landed a customer, they were worth $4,800, right? So we could use that with some intelligence for even in the earlier days to think about what are we willing to spend to get another customer.
It almost seems like a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's coming up, and I'm willing to bet somebody out there has got this question rolling around in their head. With all these businesses that you've created, are the metrics, when you form a new company, are you starting off with those same metrics, or are the metrics going to be different with each company that you're building?
It's a great question. Again, these are some of the ones that I think would transcend across, all. The metrics will vary from there because your goals and objectives, which turn into things that you're going to do, that you're going to want to measure, and what does success look like will vary, right? So if it's a physical product, there's going to be some different metrics than if it was a software as a service application that someone's renting every month, versus a service you're delivering, like being a consultant or services around being a doctor, a dentist, or whatever. And so the metrics will vary depending on kind of physical product, service, and getting a little more granular to what that is. And each one will sort of be tracking different things. So it might be foot traffic. It might be, how many times you turn the table over for a restaurant, and what's your downtime when it's costing you money for fixed costs, but you're not making any variable costs or very variable revenue. Like some of the things will vary by what you do, but I'd say there are some basic ones that you'll, that in my case I carry with me to sort of whatever it is. And I've now gone into all kinds of different spaces beyond technology and physical products, we've now got a manufacturing facility, and we're in an innovation think tank where we've spun out 4 ideas. We've sold one, so we have 3 now that we've worked on, and one's a consumer product we've brought to market, and so it's completely different, mindset. But to the earlier thing you asked about, from starting up and then scaling or crossing over to scaling, that also has some commonality to it. So I think measurement and tracking and understanding customer acquisition, customer experience, and delighting the customer, a lot of these things will be slight twists to them, but are key for success. Because if you get your customers on a happy path and they stay with you, and you delight them and create wow moments, well, they're going to tell others, and your best prospect is your current customer, because who they know and who they'll tell. And we listen to our friends, trust our friends more than we trust ads. So, all of those sort of generalities, but the bottom line is you sort of work through that flow. And then when it comes to that, how do you pour gas and scale it? The answer is not things like, well, I'll just hire 100 salespeople. We just need more heads and hands in sales, and we'll blow the number out. If you're an enterprise tool that costs $100,000 or more, sure, maybe that makes sense, because it's very more relationship driven and a long sales cycle, and you need expert salespeople to do so. But in a lot of other cases, there's other solutions to that. And I think so. There's some things that carry over into to all the industries, including the metrics and some of the customer experience things.
Yeah, I think when you were talking about especially the cost of that customer acquisition, you still have that as a main metric. It's just based on what the business model is how you're going to figure out what that cost is going to be. So you gave the restaurant example versus constant contact example. It's very different customer, different experience. And so coming up with how much money are we losing when the table is empty? Well, that's specifically for the restaurant, but it's still related to that customer acquisition as well as the customer experience and that sort of thing. So that's very helpful. Now, a lot of the things that you're talking about here, the one thing that is a common thread amongst everything that you're talking about is mindset. You're sharing your mindset with us. This is how you think and how you perceive businesses. This is the lens that you look through. So what shaped your mind over these past how many years you've been in business?
We don't want to go there. It's been a long time.
Noticed I skirted the conversation.
Yeah, it's the lighting here that I usually have a full head of hair, but it's the lighting. Yeah. So there are a few things, and I think one of the ones that started with me in my life that carried right into business. So one of my mantras is no means not now. And so I don't hear no ever. And so as a kid, I would go ask my mom on a hot summer day, can I have ice cream? She's like, no. But I knew that if I did some chores and I kind of sweetened up a little bit and it was there to help in any way, when I came back around and asked again, the answer was always, yes, dear, you can have ice cream. And sometimes it could lead to two popsicles. I did enough, right? So as I move into sort of from the business perspective, if starting a business is really hard and you're going out and you're talking to people about investment or loans or partnering or customers or whatever, you get a lot of no's, in the early days. And if I had $1 for every no I got, I could have retired on that probably. But I never heard no because I just, it was just a timing thing or it wasn't, we just needed to cultivate the relationship a bit more. And I turned many of those no's into yeses, just simply by staying in the game. And so I didn't hear no to be defeated by it. I heard a no as an opportunity. And so mindset is so important because you can get caught up in things and spiral with your mindset that could lead to businesses. A lot of businesses will fail simply by the obstacles that they face. And so one of the second things I would say is that, when you're starting a business, there's a lot of challenges. You're going to have a lot of obstacles. And so normally what we do is we wake up in the morning, we go into the office and we take a piece of paper, we write the obstacle down and we put a little empty box and we hope we check it by the end of the day. We don't get to it. We're busy, all the daily tactical things and new opportunities that kick in, like we don't touch it. Sits there and it just in your mind it's growing and it weighs on you, it's on your shoulders. And so what I would say is you've got to get in the office and carve out time to look at that obstacle. You're not the first one that's ever experienced it, so get out and get some counsel on how to knock down the obstacle. How did people fail at trying to solve the obstacle? How can you break it down into smaller pieces and chip away at the obstacle? And you'll start to get a muscle memory around dealing with this, because I'll guarantee you the minute you close out the obstacle, behind it is a bigger one.
Oh, yeah.
And then you close that one out, behind it's a bigger one, because as you're going and going, and most businesses, or a lot of businesses that I see fail because they gave up, they quit. I can't handle this. It's too much. It's stressful. It's this, it's that. And so just knowing you're going in and doing something hard, it's not a sport. It's really honestly something you've got to, if it is a sport, then you got to figure out how to be an Olympian, right? You've got to really master it to be able to get in a rhythm so that obstacles are dealt with. And so your mind has to be set on taking that and saying, I'm going to tackle that one. I'm going to knock it down and get it out of the way. And so your mindset can't be like, here we go again. My shoulders are just getting so heavy and what am I going to do today? I don't even want to go to the office today. You got to just go full bore at it. And believe me, they're going to hit you like, how are we making payroll Friday? How are we, some big ones. We have people we've hired that have families to, feed, and we can't make payroll. And so the third thing I would just say is kind of as the big three for me is find humor in everything you do. So I live by humor. I find things like as the worst thing hits, we'll try to make a joke about it, try to get everyone laughing a little bit, try to get the endorphins going. That'll help counter that weight that you feel from stress. And so I find humor, and I'm the guy that will find getting everyone laughing at a funeral. And it's not in disrespect, but it's more about let's celebrate that person and all the great times we had and tell the stories of that we would laugh over. Because, they would want us to be celebrating their life, not being, weighed down from the loss. And so at the end of the day, I think it's just really important to kind of work through these things. And I do those with all around mindset, visualizing success in anything I do, visualizing this company will succeed. This company will be a success. And now we just have to figure out what are we doing, the small wins that we could do today to get us toward that goal and celebrate. So this mindset has to lead to physically celebrating it, ringing a bell, clapping, cheering, putting on your favorite song, whatever it's going to take to get you fired up to celebrate that you had a win. And if you have a win in the day, whatever that was, it was making a phone call, or then don't celebrate yet, make another call, because you're going to be energized and fired up. They're going to feel that energy through the phone, and you're going to have a successful call again. And do that several times. And at the end of the day, then you want to celebrate.
Oh, I have so many questions. All right, coaches and mentors. Do you work with a coach, or do you have a mentor that you work with now?
I'm not working with someone formally. I'm the one that I'm coaching everyone versus my getting coached. Sure. I do have folks in my life that I tap to run things by, that have if I've had success with, or have had success in their own right, either whether it's personal and mindset, or holistically speaking, or if it's on business. So I do tap folks now and then for guidance, but I don't formally work with a coach.
Well, that just ties back into the importance of relationship, building those quality relationships. Have you ever had to bootstrap a company?
Yeah. And so Constant Contact is, the one everyone knows is the best example. There were three of us in an attic. We weren't getting paid. We went till we got some funding around the 18-month time frame or so. So we went with no salary. We had incurred some, we were paying for things, and we said, well, we'll get paid back. And, when you bring in investors, the last thing they want is their money to go to old debt. So it's like, well, translate that into equity or something else. We're not paying you, you're paying some of that back. And that's not a Constant Contact specific example, but that happens. And I can just remember, so I had some success prior, an IPO and an acquisition prior to Constant Contact. And so I just remember my mom was just in my ear, almost daily about, how could you dare move from a very well-paying position, and then do this startup thing and not take a salary, and you have 3 mortgages, you're going to go bankrupt. She was in my ear nonstop. But notice that, at year 10, when we went public, we had our initial public offering on Facebook in all caps. It was my mom writing, I always knew it would be a success. I'm like, thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I know bootstrapping very well, to the point where we were, and I'm not going to, again, not Constant Contact specific, but there were times I had to take out a credit card to make payroll on something because we didn't have the funds, and we were pre-revenue from customers, or just getting that flywheel going, and it was tough, but we had to do whatever it took, and had to buy some equipment use a credit card to buy some equipment. So some of the interns we had that were going to help us on the tech side needed computers to work from. And I borrowed equipment, like everything bootstrapping. I went to someone who was a big at the time, still is actually one of the largest distributors of hardware and software to small and medium businesses. And I called and said, do you have any demo equipment or just some old stuff sitting in the back we could borrow? And so not only did he said, Alec, you've been great to me. Let me see what I can do. He calls one of the larger vendors and said, I need you to ship 10 machines loaded to this address. So we get 10 brand new systems fresh out of the box. And I was just like, we were all almost crying. Like, we're like, this is like a gift from heaven. Like, how could this be? And I called Leo, the owner of the company, and who was a distributor for them, not the company itself. And I said, I think you made a mistake. I was just talking about like some of the old remnants in the back. And he said, I called them and asked them to send 10 demo machines to you that we're working on the project together. And I said, when we get funding, I'll pay you. And he said, we'll talk about that when the time comes. And so it was like, a couple of years into it, I called him and I said, what do we owe you? And he said, we wrote it off. Don't worry about it.
Wow. Those relationships.
So relationships. Yes. And I could give you 10 stories like that, where somebody stepped up simply by just doing an ask, or could you help us in any way? And my other favorite was, in the early days, you got to look big, right? You got to perception. You got to have people think you're real. And so we have friends that were downtown Boston in the high-rise buildings over the Boston Harbor, in mahogany conference rooms for law firms and accounting firms. And I'd say, hey, can we borrow the conference room for an hour? Someone's coming in and we're going to have a big meeting, or we had a couple of meetings. Can we just borrow the conference room? And they're like, I'll see what I can do. And then, we always got a conference room. And we literally had a fixed time in the room before we were going to get kicked out. And so I just remember we'd be sitting in there, people would walk in, they go right to the window, they see the view, and they're like, wow, this is this is incredible. I've never seen such a beautiful view, and this room is amazing. It's all mahogany. And we're just like, yeah, we work out of here now and then. And, and so I just remember sitting there positioning myself so I could see the glass wall and people walking by, and seeing some people looking in like, who are those people? And they were like, I think we got to go now. So we wrap our meeting up and get out. But it's like, you got to be scrappy and do things that can help take the idea forward, that don't always cost money, and it's through relationships.
Absolutely. All right, I want to get one more tip out of you here.
Right.
About time management. You are a busy man. You're running a lot of things, doing a lot of things, helping a lot of people, building a lot of relationships. How in the world do you manage your time?
That's a great question. As I sit here today with 2 worldwide summits and 2 podcast interviews, and this being my favorite, by the way, I just want to say the CEO space, you and the CEO space, and Bernie, and it's a warm spot in the heart for me to be invited on faculty and be able to meet everyone and speak and so on. So I appreciate that. So I dropped everything to be here, just so you know. But I do manage time. I don't get a lot of sleep most days, just because I run on about 4 or 5 hours sleep, and I learned that from my dad, who didn't sleep much, just for all his reasons. But I'm very, very diligent about, and I can multitask, which that's the thing that most people that know me well are like, I have no idea how you do that. But I'm just quick to focus on something, give it 100% of my effort, and then switch on to the next thing and let that go. And I time block stuff. I should have a system. I know that's your specialty, and I should have a system for it. But mine is just I'm really strict about kind of what I'm doing and when. And then I also am really strict about when it stops, and I shut it down and put my phone away, and I have my time and downtime and doing the things that I love. So I'm good. I'm really good about it. Calendaring is key, and color coding and calendaring, and really understanding. I've just heard recently some great systems with the color coding. If it's got to bring you money, it's green, and if it's got to cost you, it's red. And and so I'm starting to implement some of those traits, I guess, in the calendaring. But really, I maximize my days, so I don't have a lot of free time by day, and that's by choice, just because I am doing a lot of things. But I'll make the time when I'm working around that.
Yeah. Well, I'm also hearing that you make time for yourself when you need it, but that's important. I was having a conversation with that. I'm working with a coach right now, and I went to LA to meet with her and a couple other people that are working on some projects with us. And as a matter of fact, I brought 2 of the people together that they've never met. So this is their first time to meet with each other. And the lady says, I spend probably about 25% of my week fantasizing, like what? Daydreaming about the vision and feeding that vision of the company. And there's what does she call it? Sprint and reset. Sprint and reset. You're sprinting for 3 to 6 months, or you're sprinting for 30 days or 60 days, and then you reset. Maybe you take a week to yourself or a 4-day weekend or whatever it is that you need to reset yourself after the hard sprint. So you're working hard, and then you get to refill and reset who you are and reset your mind around everything, because it can get quite chatty upstairs. If you don't have if you don't have a way to offload that with all the ideas. Entrepreneurs, we're full of ideas. We get shiny object syndrome is part of our nature too, I do believe. So it's keeping that focus. I like what you said. I'm focused. I give 100% to what I'm working on. I close that box, I open the next box, and I give 100% there. And you don't allow distractions. I also kind of heard that in between the lines.
Oh yeah, I mute the phone, or I put it on airplane mode, because I just, we all want to like, oh, got a text, drop everything. Who texted me? Let me go read it. I just, people know how to get a hold of me if it's an emergency, and if it's not, then they also know. Like my mom just knows, like, I shouldn't call you during the day because you never pick up. And the famous line is, "I'm having an affair with your voicemail." And so she always knows, but she'll know if she calls me at 6 o'clock, or she can usually get me because I've just shut it all down and I'm ready to receive and then take that time for myself. You raised one key point, and that's innovation time. So I'm a thinker and an idea guy, and so I do carve out time for innovation time, by the way, it can't be put it on the schedule. Sure. It's like, if you're going to write a book, don't say, well, at 2 p.m. I'm going to start to write another chapter of my book. Like, it's got to, the creative flow, and you have to adjust. And so with my schedule as tight as it is, I'm very good at adjusting. Like, if I'm getting on an idea path with something, or I want to noodle on that, like, whatever I had for that block, I move it and I just go with it. And sometimes I wake up in the night and I have a pad next to the bed and I write down stuff because I won't remember in the morning. And then I'm like, that's a great idea. Wow, I'm so glad I wrote it down. I would have remembered. And so the bottom line is you need to adjust and be flexible for things that kick in, and then just get back on track, and just be conscious of that.
Awesome. Alec, oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours. You're full of wonderful wisdom, sage advice, lots of experience. I think you carry a lot of superpowers that you bring to the table, and you can solve a lot of problems. I can hear that too. And I'm so looking forward to the next time I get to have an interview with you, so I can get some more of these questions I've written down here answered. I got a lot of questions, but I'm really looking forward to
anytime.
Awesome. Yeah, and then you're going to be teaching at the upcoming forum about pillars for achieving small business success. So pillars for achieving small business success, the early days lessons learned. And I cannot wait to hear more about what your experiences are, what you can share with us. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And thank you. And again, once again, I love what you and Bernie are doing, and the whole team, and the CEO space community. I mean, it's much more than even a membership. It's a community. And I've had such great experiences, and I've met some amazing people, and collaborating with some and mentoring with some, and it's been wonderful. So thank you for all that you're doing. Summits, really wanted to get into that point. And so there's no one more scrappy than I. Like I in the earliest days, just, first of all, when you don't have money, you're really good about conserving what you spend on because you don't have it. But also you got to pick and choose your battles. But there were things like, the stories I mentioned about calling somebody and get us some equipment, or, we were able to get some stuff printed. I got someone to create our logo for free. Got the print shop was a friend's print shop, and he said, I'll make up some business cards for you guys. Like whatever it took, like we were just not spending money. Yeah. But at the same time, like there were a lot of things, like being scrappy is leading with value. And so I won't tell you any more stories, so I'm sure you have to go. But there's some great stories of just what we did in the early days, where we led with some value to somebody, and then what they gave us back in return was, priceless. And so all those opportunities exist. And like the term stickiness that we all use in marketing was coined with constant contact. Like Forrester research said, constant contact is the stickiness required for the internet economy. And why? Because the guy who was the VP of, Stan Dolberg was the VP of e-commerce and the internet division. They were enterprise only. They never did small business. But I was a report reader for him. I offered my time to read reports before they published them to give feedback. And after 6 months of doing that, I said, Stan, if you ever had a moment for me to just tell you about a new idea we have, would you be open to us coming in? He said, he yelled out to his secretary, Alec's going to call you to book time with me. Give him an hour. So I call the secretary, we book an hour, we go in, so I told him about what we were doing with Constant Contact. And so he put in an enterprise report, a call out alert. Constant Contact is the stickiness required, and just told a little bit about us. Like in an enterprise report, because they went on and started writing reports for small business, just like Gartner and others did, but it didn't exist at the time. And of course now a phrase gets coined that everyone uses for marketing, but it was with us in mind. And so cool. By offering value to read reports for him, and then get time with him at some point when it made sense to get his feedback.
Smart relationship.
Yep.
It's all about your relationship building strategy. That'd be a great conversation for us to have next time. Tell me about your relationship building strategies.
Listen, it's lead with value, always.
Always lead with value, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Alec, thank you again. I can't wait for you to teach. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anytime you want to chat.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too.